I think we're live. Let's see. There it is. Okie dokie. So today... Oh, you know what? I forgot to change the title and do the thingy. Whoa. Pocket Monster Manual. D&D Pokemon. Pokemons. So we're doing Charmander as a sorcerer. You know, just for fun. I'm gonna change this real quick. I'm gonna change the thingy. What the hell? I'm sure this is riveting content. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, we did it. Okay, so we got Charmander. I did like an initial sketch that I will probably not use for the final pose, just because I think we want to get this guy a little more structurally sound. I'll just leave that at full opacity and we can draw over here on this next layer. And we'll have that off to the side just as a kind of frame of reference for what we're going for. I'm also sitting down today. Usually I stream standing up. See if this is better for my endurance. Kind of like the slight looking off in this direction, sort of. But I also want to... It's probably like super light. Maybe we'll see about turning this up a little bit. Okay. It might be a little easier to see. Sorry, we're gonna go in real light first. And I think with these starter mons, you know, you can afford to be a little simpler with the design and just kind of capture the basic archetypes. So we've already got Druid Bulbasaur. Makes sense, right? This one's definitely my favorite so far, and probably why I finished it first, quote unquote finished it. There'll probably be some finishing touches on it before I go to print on that guy, and then Squirtle, which I'm okay with this design so far. I might change some things up before it is finally ready to go, but you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So, at any rate, Charmander, I figure, kind of makes sense as a sorcerer, because Charmander is a fire lizard, a dragon kind of creature. And sorcerers typically have, in Dungeons and Dragons, you know, they potentially get their magic from some sort of some sort of draconic ancestry, whether they're a dragonborn or just or some other type of race. So, makes sense to make Charmander a sorcerer for the context of this little project here. And I like the idea of him kind of like raising his arm. One thing I was having trouble with on this first one is like, I finally decided to just give him like a long tunic that's sort of comes down to his knees because it was looking like whenever I put a belt on him or anything without anything down here, it just looked like he was wearing a diaper or something. It was like, we need to just cover that area. And I'm trying to like capture the shape of Charmander without making him like too dumpy. And it's like trying to give them sort of humanoid clothes. Is an interesting challenge to try and like keep their proportions. Right. So I want the pose to be a little more dynamic. That's part of the reason I'm redoing this little sketch here before we get into the inking phase. More dynamic pose. A little bit more of an angle kind of on it. And then, see, the tunic just does so much work in making him or her not look as I don't know, like it's gonna like he's gonna like waddle around like a little baby or something. But they do have short little legs, especially when it's the first evolution we're looking at, right? So we want to make sure we capture that kind of shortness in both the arms and the legs. He's definitely, yeah, he's looking like that kind of squatness makes them look cuter, right? So that's part of the goal. And I don't know why I just felt like wearing the hood today to look like a medieval peasant. Just doing peasant things, Drawing Pokemon for the masses, selling my soul by doing some fan art here. I do love a lot of the design work in Pokemon, though. I think I've got strong nostalgia for Gen 1 Pokemon, and let's see, because I think I eventually got a Game Boy Color at a garage sale. All my friends had, Game Boys, and like by the time I got one, the Game Boy Advance was already out and everything. But I got one of the purple see-through Game Boy Colors at a garage sale for $8. What a deal. What a deal that was. Crazy. Crazy good deal on that sucker. Trying to decide what I want to have his hand doing here. He's got his claws kind of reaching out like so. It's pretty tight. To give him some spell components or something as well. And we don't want to make these too ostentatious, because then if we go in to do the evolutions as well, we want to have a little run room with the design. So we want to make these first ones fairly simple. And I kind of like the tail out this way. said, didn't want to get too crazy with the design, but I do feel like there needs to be something kind of in that chest region. Maybe he'll have his kind of component pouch bag off to the side like so. And we'll have that little fiery tail element, of course. And he is looking a little bit thick, which is not wrong per se, but it's also like tough when they've got clothes on to capture the classic like Charmander look. I didn't think Charmander would be the most challenging of these, to be honest. I thought it was going to be Bulbasaur, because Bulbasaur doesn't typically stand up, but actually, I don't know, it's like something about the kind of those kind of squatter characters that I'm just maybe find a little bit easier to draw. Because by comparison, Charmander is supposed to be like a bit longer, you know, than Bulbasaur, but sometimes it's kind of hard to capture that. In a context like this. You know, it's tough too to get the kind of proper feeling out of the eyes, especially when, you know, you're trying to capture the eyes that are used in like a really stylized format, like this sort of like anime look. But then there's other elements that, you know, are maybe a little more detailed than would be common in that original format. And somebody who does a really good job of that is David Raposa, who has some pretty cool like Pokemon fan art where it's like really heavily like kind of painterly render kind of situation on it. It's pretty cool stuff. Right now I'm just pulling up some reference for Charmander to make sure I know what I'm doing here. Now Charmander, good for a sorcerer or like a kind of wizardly figure because he's kind of the moodiest of the three, right? In the anime, I guess you have like the cool Squirtle. I don't know if Bulbasaur has a personality in the old show at all. But I know that Charmander, right, is like all cute and stuff, and then he grows up and he's like an asshole for a while until he and Ash become a little more simpatico. Once they understand each other a little bit better, which I think is it's kind of fun. The thing about Pokemon is always, of course, the kind of disturbing implications that these are pretty intelligent creatures who are just forced to like fight each other at the whims of humans, and it's basically like entirely for recreation. Like there's no purpose to it. Like I know, like they kind of expand on. It's like, okay, well, what jobs would these Pokemon actually be employed to do? And in any case, they're still like kind of serving human industries, which I think is sort of funny. I think in the context of like a D&D type thing, I'm going to do up some stat blocks for them as like familiars with kind of special abilities. So like Charmander would be a good companion either for another magic user or, you know, as kind of like a way to enhance spells without being like too OP. Squirtle could kind of be like a fighting like sidekick, like somebody to help like zone enemies and help you disengage from encounters or something like that. And then Bulbasaur could have like some kind of druid type support spells or something like that. And I think it just could be a fun thing to play around with if you were so inclined to pick up and play one of these characters. Okay, we got the tied off belt right here, hanging down. And maybe he's got some other kind of spell components, like powders or other substances on his little pack here that can either be spell components or in combination with like a fire attack of some type. He could like toss them out and then light them, and then it creates a, you know, an explosive flash or something like that. That could be fun. Just thinking of ways that you might actually utilize these fellows in a D&D type scenario. I didn't really introduce what, you know, kind of spurred on this project. It's sort of like a couple different things. One, it sort of fits with the kind of theme that I'm going for the month. It's not like a random page out of a monster manual, but it is kind of like a creature that could be like a mercenary or a helper, or a, you know, there's sort of like a combination monster player mercenaries type thing. And then also just you know, I think I put out a little short video of the Bulbasaur one, and it was just like, oh yeah, this middle schooler came up to me and was like, it was middle schooler that I DM'd for at an event. I was like, I want why can't I have Pokemon in D&D? And I was like, well, you know, it just depends on the table you play at, but there's really not a explicit reason that you can't. You know, as long as, I mean, the game supports things like familiars and animal companions, so if that companion just happened to look like, you know, a Charmander, I don't see what the big deal would be, you know? Like, what's the big deal? All this shit is made up anyway. So... And if it's all made up, then more power to you for doing what you like. I don't know what it is. Maybe this, maybe I do have to stand up, or maybe it's this hood or something that's like bothering my shoulder back here. I'm probably, you know, it's funny because Pokemon has been around almost as long as D&D at this point. I mean, it's, I mean, not quite almost, you know, it got like, D&D probably has like, what, 20 years on Pokemon? I don't know when D&D came out, actually. 70s or was it 80s? In any case, Pokemon is like, what, early 90s? Which is, 30 years ago at this point. So, Pokemon is old now. Pokemon is for old people. Except it's not, and that's how they're able to release the same game every year, because it's just like fresh new kids want to get into the Pokemans. And the original Pokemon are still rocking it. I mean, personally, you know, when I was playing the games, I would probably, you know, I was a normie. I would always go for, you know, your standard Charmander or Squirtle, but I think design-wise, The strongest is definitely Bulbasaur, and the cutest. I mean, look at this little fella. Look at his little face. Look at it. He's like a chubby little guy. He's great. Yeah, I just that's not the right one, but yeah, I like Bulbasaur. I like Bulbasaur. Yeah, see, like Squirtle. What is this? He's like got the little tail, so he's kind of like it's like obviously squirt water. We get it, but like the squirrel part of it, I didn't realize was a thing until recently. Like he's got the little squirrel-like tail, and it's kind of like, well, this theme kind of doesn't make any sense. Like it's just like the name is like that. I don't know. Whereas like Bulbasaur, and as Bulbasaur evolves, you get the bulb on the back kind of opening up. Definitely feels like a little more thought was put into that. Charmander is just like salamanders, lizards, always been associated with dragon, fire. That one, kind of low-hanging fruit there, for sure. Not that Charizard, especially, great little design, even though it is very classic, just like, oh, it's a dragon, you know. That being said, I also I like all three original starters. I think they're all great. We don't have to play favorites here. So yeah, we have him kind of looking off in wonderment. Perhaps this is before he becomes a whiny teenager, an angsty teen. So in one of the short videos with Squirtle, somebody commented and asked, why did I do the lines on that like 5 times? And I think I was just, so for that one in particular, I was just having a lot of trouble feeling good about the design, and so there were like subtle little changes on every pass that I made, but also just generally with something like this where it is a little more line heavy. You want to get those right, and I just ended up going over them like several different times with like darker pencils, just dropping the opacity and seeing how I felt about it until I felt good enough that I was like, okay, I can ink this and there's not going to be extra little noise in there that's going to distract me while I'm inking. Because that can be a real nuisance. It's like, oh, is this like part of the design? What did I intend for this? You know, that can just be an annoyance, not something you want to deal with while you're inking. And we'll have, I was thinking like, because Charmander would be kind of a natural magic user as a sorcerer, that they would not have any kind of like weapon, and that maybe their spell casting focus is just like, I don't know, some kind of amulet or pendant with the little like fire, Pokemon fire symbol on it. I thought that could be kind of cool. Another reason I'm redoing the line work on this one in particular is because I forgot to turn on the time-lapse capture. So I don't know if there's a way to automatically do that. I'm sure that would eat up a ton of my hard drive space if I were to have that on every single one of my files. But as it stands, forgot to do that with this one. Alright, so he's got his little wizard hat. I have some like chill Pokemon music playing in the background. I don't know if people dig that. Usually I'm bumping some just standard lo-fi beats or like a Diablo music I've been into since middle school. I've been into that since I started playing Diablo. I love the Diablo music, but like they've got some like lo-fi versions of Diablo stuff, and that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. I like where this is headed thus far. So let's go ahead and drop the opacity on this sucker. Jump into a new layer. And we'll come in and we'll do another pass on the lines. Charmander's the sharp little teeth going on there. Yeah, the other thing is like when I put out the time lapse of these, it kind of looks like I'm not changing anything as I go from line to line, or the different what do you call it? Each pass doesn't look like it's changed that significantly, but generally it's a lot cleaner. It's just less noisy, as I mentioned before. And that can be important. So you can always add a little bit of noise back in the inking phase. Not noise, but like you can add, little bits of line work to enhance the feeling of the folds and stuff. It's not something that you necessarily want as you're trying to get the big important steps of the line work in. With a big chunky belt buckle here. Decorative element at the bottom here of his funny little belt. Knock that off. Probably like check on if I'm doing them. This belt looks kind of messed up. This doesn't look right. Better to fix it now. Better to fix it now than later. Yeah, becoming the way I've done it. We'll just finish off this belt, even though it's going to be covered partially with that strap. The way I've done it, it would be, so it comes over, I'm going to tie it off, and then it drops down like here. And this is back in the day when you just wear your belt and you wouldn't have belt loops to put the rest of the belt in. So you do a little knot there. Classic fantasy and medieval art stuff. Not sure what I'm doing with this strap yet, so I'm just gonna figure that out as we go. We'll give him some little vials right here. As I said, give him some kind of interesting little spell components to play with. Now, I'm sure that this has been done before, because how could it not have been done before? Like, people have probably wanted to have Pokemons in their tabletop role-playing games. It's just something that would be natural and would make sense. I can't imagine in the version of Pokemon where they just, say their own name as opposed to make like animal noises. I can't imagine DMing that. That would be torturous. It's funny. I'm like making this, but it's like I actually probably would not want to do more than a session or two with Pokemon as part of the campaign. It's probably not something I would be particularly interested in myself, except as kind of like a conceptual, like I like the idea of having like a Pokemon-like companion that's like a little bit more active in like combat and role-playing than a familiar might be. Like, you can get pretty creative, and the familiars have some cool abilities and stuff, but they're not kind of like fighting, I would say, with as much effectiveness as you might imagine a Pokemon would. And they're not as obviously, like, Pokemon are like in the Pokemon universe, in that world, they are like the central thing that like everybody cares about in that universe. And so, it's a little bit, that would be kind of an interesting dynamic in Dungeons and Dragons, but you probably wouldn't want to play it that way. You know, I actually think I was more comfortable standing up. Might have to make that switch. I think his head shape is a little closer to the cartoon in this previous sketch. But it's also like hard to tell because of the hat. Kind of missed that top part. So I'm gonna make his eyes a little bit bigger. And it's interesting, for Charmander, they kind of have his eyes more like on the side of his head. Which is kind of lizard-like, but it isn't very predator-like, you know, if that's really the role that he fills in. He gets a little bit more like that, I guess, with later iterations, but... yeah, I don't want to deck them out with too many items either. Like, it made sense for Bulbasaur. I feel like Bulbasaur was supposed to have kind of like a hermit sort of look to him. Again, I just don't want to go too crazy on the additional details here. So when I DM'd this game where we had this player, nice young man, asking about Pokemon and D&D. We didn't introduce it right then and there, thank goodness. Thank goodness that was not a deal breaker for him. But yeah, I was DMing for 6 middle schoolers. One of them jumped onto my my crew. I was supposed to only have 5. It was a small debacle. And then at the end of the session, one of the kids asked me if that was the most chaotic D&D table that I've ever run, and I have to say it definitely was. It was like, at one point the party split into 3 groups. Like, there were 3 doors at the beginning of the dungeon. Each one could be opened by like a pretty simple puzzle, and it was kind of the same for all of them. So what they did was, once they figured that out, they immediately opened the other 2 doors and then split. And I'm the kind of DM where I don't like to say no to players. I just like to let them figure out the consequences of doing things in a certain way. But what they would do is they would just like, because surprisingly none of them in the first encounter managed to get themselves killed in each. They didn't go deep enough through each door, but they did okay for themselves. And then they just immediately set up camp in the first area of the dungeon and took a long rest after they had gone and screwed around in these like 3 different areas. They're like, yeah, we don't have enough healing items, so we're just gonna take a rest. Which, you know, I more power to them. They had fun. That's really all that matters. It was not, we were just running this kind of standard module for the group that had been, kind of brewed up and given to us. It was actually, I think it was adapted from something, but basically it was, pretty simple. And I kind of approach D&D as like, I don't really care what happens. Like, if the players are invested in the story more, that's fine. But I never lay out my sessions in such a way that it like requires that they do anything specific to have fun. And a lot of DMs, especially new DMs, will set up these like really elaborate kind of like story things, and then when the players don't take the bait on it, they get frustrated. And I found that the best way around that is to basically just let them go off and do stuff, and then use the content that you prepared from that original encounter that you would hope they would get into, and just put it wherever they happen to go. Not in a really obvious way. It's not railroading in the same way that it's like, well, actually, I'm just going to put you into a cutscene where a bunch of stuff happens that ends up with you taking the quest. It's just like, oh, well, I had this cool puzzle room or this cool encounter that I really wanted them to engage with, and it's like, well, they don't know that that was supposed to be in one place and not another, unless you give them a little too much information on that, or maybe they do the investigation, they put a lot of work into finding out what's ahead, and then they just say nah. And even when that happened, I can't think of an instance where that's really happened. Like, if your party is going to just screw around, they'll probably just start doing that immediately. You will probably know pretty quickly if they're going to be the type of party that actually cares about doing the stuff that you've laid out. But right now I'm playing like a little mini thing on Roll20 with a friend who I usually DM for, and that's been really fun. This is my character for that, Gurak. He is a cleric of Talos, who is an evil deity, so that's been kind of fun. Like, he is not evil himself, but he's sort of like, he worships Talos to appease him and hopefully assuage his destructive desires. So kind of just a fun little concept especially for like a one-off campaign. Although sadly, just because it's over Roll20 and it's a kind of truncated time period, there's not as much opportunity for role playing and that sort of character building element, but that's a-okay. It's a Tempest cleric, so a little bit more combat oriented, and the entire party is also clerics. That's another that was another little stipulation for this. I am thinking now that all wizards would have been kind of interesting. We would have all been like incredibly squishy. I think but even like, so you think like, oh, clerics, you all got healing abilities. It's like, well, yeah, at first level though, you only get like 2 spell slots. So, we were in the very first encounter, 2 of us were downed almost immediately. My character only stayed up because they were a half-orc, and so they have relentless endurance. And then I was downed with basically my next move, even after being healed again. So it was messy for sure. Very, very messy. I feel like this hand's a little big and this hand is a little small. Luckily, with the power of digital, we can remedy that a little bit without too much trouble. This music is kind of groovy. I'm kind of digging it. Let's do his little tail here. obviously one of the key elements of Charmander. Weirdly pretty. It's like when they introduce like that in the show where it's like, oh yeah, if the light on his tail goes out, he dies. Like Charmanders will die if their tail light goes out. Tail light, huh? Which is yeah, pretty messed up. I just remember like there's the scene of Charmander like trying to sleep under a big leaf in the rain. His light's really dim. I was like, damn, this is dark stuff. One thing we'll have to deal with Charmander as well, if we're going to go with this kind of holding a fireball sort of element, is 2 light sources. So that'll be kind of interesting to play with once we get into the coloring phase with those. Okay. I kind of like how this fella's turning out so far. I think he's pretty cute. Let's drop this one. So now we've got a kind of like a little darker, a little bit cleaner line art pass. I think I could probably take this to inks as it is, based on, you know, maintaining some consistency with the other 2. God, I'm still really digging Bulbasaur for sure. Squirtle may need some more work on this one, but overall, you know, I don't think he's bad per se. Now looking at his tail, it looks a little small. Maybe he needs a bigger tail. Come back to that, revisit that a little bit later. All right, let's go ahead and get some inks going. I just want to make sure this is the same color as I've got on, because I don't go full black on these necessarily. It just kind of depends. Oops, wrong layer. So this one I actually, yeah, hopefully end up ultimately doing fewer passes on the line work. This music is very serene. Which is cool. So, I mean, with regards to, you know, like how finished are these really? Because it feels like there's a lot of, even while maintaining a simple design, a lot of room to kind of incorporate more elements and more details that would fit with the Pokemon kind of universe, and just bring some of that flavor in. But frankly, I'm just not versed enough in Pokemon stuff to do that on the fly. I feel like I did have an idea with this guy, or maybe it was Squirtle and his little bag down here. There's like a little Pokeball like thing going on, but that is not an approach I've taken with all of these. So it's basically just like, I think for this one I'm going to put the little fire symbol like right there in the middle, and I may just copy and paste it. I may just copy and paste it from somewhere. So I have some plans to make actual videos on this channel. I haven't gotten around to it, so right now it's just streams and shorts. The longest format possible and the shortest. Which is kind of funny, but they're also like weirdly each the most low effort, just because they require the least amount of editing. Which is not something I don't necessarily enjoy. It's just like, this is not drawing, and so it's not as much fun. And that can be a real bummer. Some bags. I need to get better at my bag and prop anatomy. Just so I can give my characters cool stuff, cool neat stuff to play with. Uh-oh, my dog's barking. Like he's some kind of Pokemon. Defending the house from intruders. Oh, I feel about that hat shape. But I think I'm going to leave it for now. We'll just go and focus on other areas of the design. Got like an additional either a coin purse or other little pouch there. Perhaps for spell components that don't fit into the bag, or maybe it's some kind of powder that's flammable or reacts with heat and fire. Could be kind of fun. I think, obviously there's something to be said for having structurally sound props, but I think for for this as well, you want them to just have kind of like fun shapes. So I'm going a little bit heavier on that element. Did I switch to, I did switch to the eraser, okay. Switch it back. I think our music has failed us. Let's fix that, shall we? I don't know if my chair creaking can be heard in the stream either. Of course, we're streaming alone once again, which is once sad, but it's also to be expected. I don't have a huge audience here by any means, and it's a good way to just kind of focus on what you're doing and ascribe some intentionality to it as well, because you kind of have to talk it through, and so your actions, the justifications for those actions are more likely to be vocalized. And if they're vocalized, you're probably thinking about them. If you're thinking about them, that gives you an opportunity to decide whether it's good or bad. This leg, grossly long. Really, like if he didn't have the tunic on, it would just be this like big, long, skinny leg that he's got going on here. So we are going to try something out here. All right, get that. Reduce the length on that, like way down. We don't really want his knee showing up in this. That's probably more appropriate, and that means that this one's going to have to be shorter as well. Which I don't think is the wrong move by any means. It's interesting. I think, at this point, I'm confident and comfortable enough with myself that these videos, well, first of all, I probably won't say anything like so crazy that I won't be able to leave them out, but also just like, sometimes you get embarrassed about things that you did, projects that you did a long time ago that maybe aren't up to your standard, and these, may become that eventually, but I don't think I'll ever take these videos down. Maybe I'll unlist them or something at some point in the distant future, but it'll be fun to have them as little time capsules kind of my workflow and process and everything. interesting to see how that changes over the years. Okay. How are we doing over here? Going for about an hour. Not bad, not bad. I think if I just got to the end of the... I was thinking like, oh, I'll do a longer stream today. But I gotta tell you, Daylight savings was not kind to me. And we had friends visiting from out of town this weekend, so we stayed up pretty late. Just didn't get a ton of sleep, and then we're hit with that, loss of an hour. Which I think they may be ceasing that practice in the U.S. soon-ish. And I gotta tell you, that cannot come soon enough. I would like to gain an hour one more time before that happens, but I don't think it's going to, if that legislation ended up going through. But anyway, yesterday and like a little bit this morning, before I had my coffee and everything, my eye was like twitching really bad. My fiance tells me that is the result of a magnesium deficiency, but I'm like, also, I'm just really tired. Anyway. So one thing with these is like, you don't want the Pokemon, because like Charmander's little Charmander hands don't really look like this. But with a Sorcerer or like a Wizard, they do a little talking with their hands. They often communicate. You're often communicating their wizardly actions through some kind of hand gestures if they don't have a wand or a staff or something, and even if they do, those kind of little flourishes definitely add some flavor to whatever's going on. Hence Doctor Strange making all his like hand symbols and whatever. Because he doesn't have a wand, I don't believe, in any of the kind of major iterations of him. This other strap's gonna come down on this side. Nice. Noish. This music is pleasant. It's not my usual jam, but it'll do. I have been having fun for these shorts, like going and digging up old like Pokemon Game Boy music. I think the Game Boy Color stuff is just a little too chunky, a little too would compressed be the right word. It's just like not quite high fidelity enough to use, I think, for my purposes. But the Game Boy Advance stuff holds up, I gotta say. Holds up pretty nicely. Yeah, once the colors are into these guys, they'll look a little better too. Or not better, but they'll look a little more kind of true to form. And I think I may want to bump up the size of his head a little more just to get a little bit more of that kind of classic Pokemon proportionality. Especially for these kind of dumpy little, first evolution guys. What's it? What are the? Is there a term for that I'm forgetting. There might be. I'm kind of also inventing this hand anatomy on the fly, which is not always what you want to be doing. But that's a good looking little, claw hand sort of thing. He's got his fire going. And I don't know if I want to do like black lines on the fire. That might be not something we want, so maybe we just add that in the kind of color phase and add it over, the stuff we got going on here. Also find you gotta be careful with getting your lines just right. Or not just right, but if your lines are too slow, even if the path is not too jittery, at least for this particular, I've got a Huion Canvas Pro, I think. And this sucker, I don't know what it is, but sometimes if I don't pull the line just right, it'll have this like jitter effect on the line. I don't know if we can tell here if it's happened. It doesn't look like it in this case, which is good. But we'll add the fire to that once we get to that color phase, like I said. We've got his hat. His little sorcerer hat. Oh, we got a cute little Charmander sorcerer coming at ya. Very nice. I almost did Borat voice there. I tried to spare you that. If anybody ever watches this, you can thank me later. You can thank me whenever you please. Well, actually, right now I don't have my online store set up yet. But we're going to be doing an online store. We're going to have a Patreon that will involve an upcoming project, or rather a project that I'm kind of working on right now, which is some of these NPC kind of little design things. So that will be fun. And yeah. So we kind of got the lines down on this, and I'm not going to go too crazy on rendering with this, kind of black, because that's not really what we're trying to do here. Do you want to establish some of this line weight and close up the gaps a little bit? Because I found the best way to color, to fill, is to do a selection with the wand tool, and then invert the selection so that you're inside of the line art, and then fill the whole thing, and then you can kind of color on top of that. And if you need to add stuff later, like with this Squirtle, for example, I had done all that, and then I was like, I feel like he needs something else, so I went ahead and added that scarf onto him, and the scarf just kind of felt right. And I just did that with like a lasso fill tool. Dropped the scarf right onto him, and then went from there. So I could always do that with Charmander as well. Just add some of those elements after the fact. Alright, so that's one Charmander Sorcerer inked up. I definitely am glad I went back and redid the line work on this, because as you can see, the pose on this fella, let's bring that up. Oops, that's the wrong one. You know what, this one already is at max opacity. Okay. So the pose on this one is not nearly as strong as the pose on this one. And it might be kind of subtle to see, but just like the proportions, the kind of angles, definitely liking what we've got going on with Charmander a little bit more than in that previous sketch. Okay. So Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Charmander, and once he's complete and all colored up, we'll get them together and maybe do a final pass over them to give them a little more unity of design. And then I'm going to be doing these as individual prints and as a single poster that will be available at the next con I'm going to be at, which is the Cleveland Fan Expo. So that's exciting stuff. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and call it a day for the stream, as for some reason my shoulders are really bugging me. And I'm also just very tired. So anyway, happy drawing out there. Hope you enjoyed watching me ink up this little Charmander Sorcerer. And yeah, take care, folks. See ya.